It's the Mike Missanelli Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Mike Missanelli Podcast, brought to us by BetRivers and BetRivers Casino, BetRivers Sportsbook, the whole deal. Download the BetRivers app where you can make your own bets. It is podcast number 98 as we inch closer to our 100th production of the Mike Missanelli Podcast since we started it last year. We're doing this one on Tuesday, July 18th. A lot of things are going on in the middle of the summer that we need to talk about. Today, we'll be joined by Joe Davis, the hottest sports broadcaster in the nation right now. Joe, of course, took over for Joe Buck when he moved to ESPN. He's the lead voice on a lot of things, including the World Series that he brought us last year with some exciting moments of him broadcasting with John Smoltz in Philadelphia. We'll talk to Joe about his career. He's 35 years old, and he's on top of the world right now in the broadcasting industry. He has a great story on how he got there, so stay tuned for that. That'll happen in a bit. But right now, let's go start the podcast with what we call the current and what is going on currently. Okay, well, the Phillies are going on. We'll touch on them in a second as they came out of the All-Star break against the San Diego Padres. But the big story that's going on right now that everybody is talking about in Philly and also nationally, the NBA is one of these drama leagues where something can happen and conversation happens. It's special about the NBA. If I'm Adam Silver, I'm delighted that people are talking about the NBA. But let's talk about what happened, because it happens this week to feature Joel the Troel Embiid and another passive-aggressive attempt to grab attention. On a podcast with Maverick Carter. This was a live podcast. Maverick Carter, of course, has claimed to fame. He was fortunate enough to be LeBron James' childhood friend, and that led to him being CEO of LeBron's company. Why didn't I have a friend like that? I had Joey Knuckles down the street. He wasn't a CEO and didn't play professional basketball, and so here I am doing my podcast without being a CEO like Maverick Carter. So Maverick Carter, who's been on that LeBron show you saw on HBO, The Shop, all that kind of thing. And he's got a one-on-one with Joel Embiid. And Embiid is no dummy. And Embiid, and the people that don't know much about Joel Embiid, I happen to know a lot about him inside the organization because people in the organization would tell me about him. Now, listen, he's a great player. He's the MVP. He's the front man of this team trying to win a championship. But he can be a little bit of a baby. And this is what the people inside the Sixers have told me. He loves the drama about himself. He loves to milk the drama. So this is what he did. He said in this podcast, I just want to win a championship. Whatever it takes, whether it's in Philadelphia or anywhere else. All right, let's delve into this, right? Now, Joel Embiid, nobody has paid attention to him the whole offseason, but they are paying attention to other people. They're paying attention to James Harden, who's put a public trade demand out there, and they're paying attention to Damian Lillard, who's put a trade demand out there. In other words, if you don't want me here, screw you. I'll go somewhere else, and this is where I want to go. This is what NBA players do now. So Embiid, not to be undaunted here, I think I'll throw the same thing out for me. I think I'll threaten the organization that maybe I would pull that same stuff unless we build a team that's good enough to win a championship. All right, so let's take that first of all. The Sixers have been trying to win a championship around Joel Embiid. Now, they may have not found the right blend yet, but it's not like they're sitting on their rear end, not making any moves to improve their team. Year after year, they look at their weaknesses and say, all right, we need this. Let's try to get this. And blah, blah, blah. They're also salary cap ridden, so it's really hard to have full autonomy on building a championship team because you don't know what the components are anyway. You just hope to stack enough good players and find enough chemistry and coach well enough to be able to win a championship. It doesn't happen all the time, right? It happened with the Denver Nuggets because they found the perfect blend, all right? That doesn't happen all the time. So if Joel Embiid thinks the Sixers haven't been trying to build around him to win a championship, then he's totally misguided. And this is what ticks me off more than anything. To say nothing about his contribution to the championship run. Now, right now, if I'm Joel Embiid, I would look within myself and say, did I do the very best to win a championship for the Sixers? Now, maybe in the regular season he did, but in the playoffs, let's face it, he came up a little short. So was it the quality of the team and the inferiority of the team they put around him, or did he have something to contribute to the Sixers not winning a championship? And this is what bugs me about this guy, because I'm not one of these guys. If you look at social media and you look at the reaction to this comment that he made, it's like, oh, I'm done with him. I don't need him. We're never going to win a championship with him. Let's just break it down. Let's just blow it out. Now that's ridiculous, because what you know is you have an MVP caliber player, and the only thing you can keep doing is keep trying to win with an MVP caliber player. At the end of the day, years down the road, if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. But it's foolish to think that you're going to be better off if you move Embiid out of this organization because you think, because you're emotional about it, that you're never going to win with Joel Embiid. In what world would you think that you wouldn't be good enough to win with Joel Embiid if you put the right components around him? So the only thing you can do is keep putting the right components around him. Now, the Harden situation is problematic. I don't know what they're going to do here with Harden. But more I read with fans' reaction is that you let your emotions get involved in what the greater good of the team is. You just can't give James Harden away. You want to trade him to the Clippers where he wants to go, and you're going to get back Joe Bag of Donuts and Norman Powell. That's not going to be good enough anyway. So people say, well, what are you going to do if he sits out? Well, if he sits out, he sits out. He only hurts himself. If you trade him for slop, you're not going to be good enough to win a championship anyway. So what's the difference if he sits out? It doesn't make any sense. He sits out, you're not going to win. He brings in a bad return, you're not going to win. So the Sixers are in the driver's seat here with James Harden. What does he have to lose? People are thinking that he can just sit out an entire year and go where he wants to go. Oh, no. He's still under contract. He is obligated to the Sixers for one more year. So if he sits out, he's not performing the contract. He's still Sixer property. He can't waste away that year by sitting out and wearing a fat suit. He's got to play to perform the contract to let that contract run out. So he can talk all the tough he wants. At the end of the day, he has to play the last year of this contract to be attractive to other teams that may want to sign him for another contract. So what does he gain by sitting out? He doesn't gain anything. Just like that, when the Sixers held fast with Ben Simmons, they weren't gaining because they didn't have a caliber a player like Simmons either in the lineup or to get in an exchange. And because they held out, they got a player that made them viable. So what's the difference here? What can James Harden do? I guess he can play. I guess he can gain weight. I guess he could be miserable and not play, and the effectiveness to the point where it looks like he's throwing basketball games. And at that point, you'd have to deal with it. But how does he gain by doing that? Because other teams are looking at that too, and they go, geez, if I acquire that guy, will he do the same thing with me? He only wants to go to one team. So if it's not the Clippers, and it's not going to be the Clippers because they can't make a good enough deal to make the Sixers a contender, then where's it going to be? He's in no man's land. And I wish people would get to see this. Daryl Morey is a smart guy. He's got years to play with. He's not going to lose his job if he allows James Harden to sit out like he allowed Ben Simmons to sit out. Because smart fans know that unless you get a viable return for James Harden, it's just like you have Harden sitting out. You're not going to win anyway. So maybe this has to be the gap year. And maybe the Sixer fans have to eat that. As much as I hate to admit that, that's the games that front offices play. At the end of the day, they're going to do what's best for them. They're not going to let fans bully them into making a bad deal because James Harden is overweight. All right, so there's the situation. So back to Embiid. Shut up, dude. It really, I've had it with the passive aggressiveness, and I know people eat this kind of thing up, but it's old now. And for you to throw that out there just to bring attention to yourself because Harden and Lillard are doing it, it's embarrassing. You do your part. Concentrate on doing your part and have belief that the organization wants to put the proper components around you to win instead of being a baby about this. And while I'm at it, how about you lose 25 pounds? Lose 25 pounds. I saw the way you were built when you came into the league. You were like Giannis. Now you've gotten thick, and I don't think there's any reason for you to be this thick. I think that you should lose some weight and get more lean and lithe. And maybe that would help the whole situation. Injury wise, whether you stop lumbering up and down the floor, all that kind of stuff. Whether because you're tired, because you're carrying all that weight, you hang out at the top of the perimeter instead of going deep at times when you need to do it. Do your part now. But the one thing I know about Embiid is he loves Philadelphia. Okay. He loves being in his little component of Philadelphia with his kid Arthur and his wife. He's got a good life. People recognize him. He's happy. Like he don't take that for granted, Joel. And don't tell me that you'd be happier somewhere else, because I know you're happy here. But I also know behind the scenes you could be a diva and a baby. So just stop it. All right? All right, that's all I had to say about Joel Embiid. Your thoughts, Darren?
I love this city. I love the fans. You hit on everything I would have said. Sometimes the fans in Philadelphia really annoy the crap out of me because this is, to me, this is much ado about nothing. People have been up in arms for 2 days about this. 2 days. I mean, it's just enough is enough. He's not going anywhere. The Sixers aren't going to let him go anywhere. They'll never in a million years be able to trade him and get good value back with anybody that can do it. So I know, look, nobody wants to hear him even mention in one breath of him playing elsewhere. It's just a point. I kind of like it, actually. He wants to win a championship, whether it's here or anywhere. That's his goal. That's a good thing. I'd like to see a little bit more in the court in the postseason, but I have no problem with what he said. It's much ado about nothing to me.
Listen, the guy obviously craves attention. The guy is obviously a troll. He says, "Hey, wait a minute! I see these guys, Harden and Lillard, doing this. They're getting talked about nationally. How about you give me a little national play? How about if I say something that say, oh, well, maybe I don't want to be here in Philadelphia? It's just an attention grab, and he does it passively aggressively. He's done it his entire career, frankly. So that's why he's Joel the Troel Embiid on his Twitter." He loves the attention. But you see, after a point, the attention fades into, all right, do your fucking job. All right. Don't fade out the last couple of games in a must win series to get you to an Eastern Conference final. We're not going to forget about that part of it. You have some personal responsibility along with the Sixers trying to build the best team around you. All right. I've said all I want to say about that. Now let's move on to the Philadelphia Phillies. I'm watching the two teams over the weekend. San Diego wins the first game, and I'm going, all right, maybe they've changed the mindset. And for the next 3 games, I saw the difference between two teams. I saw one team that has fight in the Phillies, and I see the other team that folds up when the pressure gets on them. I watched those 3 games. There is something wrong with the San Diego Padres. You could tell that they are just a team waiting during the course of any game to just melt down and lose the lead and not have enough fight to come back. And while I'm at it, let me talk about the difference between Juan Soto and Acuna Jr. At one point, I thought those two players were the best in the game. I look at Soto now, and I think he's a semi-clown. I don't deny his talent. But Juan Soto walks around thinking that he's way better than he is. He's always got the star glide. He misplayed about 4 balls in the outfield in that series, right? He's got the star glide about him. It's all like the puffery, the fanfare, the showing off, the whole bit. Acuna freaking attacks every minute on a ball field. And those are the two. That's the difference between the two. Two great players. Soto thinks a little too much of himself being a star. Acuna proves that he's a star every day. And the San Diego Padres are dead. They're a dead team. You can tell. They just don't have the right mix. I mean, they line up Soto and Machado and Bogarts and Tatis Jr., and they can't win. Why? Because there's something missing with that team. And when you looked at the Phillies, you had to say, well, you know what? I've got a better team than that team. I've got a team that I know is going to be reliable enough to be in the playoffs and maybe fight for a World Series. That other team, they spent $300 million with Mierda, basically, and they're dead in the water. Now, what are they going to do? So now there's these rumors that maybe Soto wants to go back to the East Coast. And right away, hey, Dave Dombrowski, would he be interested in Soto? Would I be interested in Soto? You're goddamn right I'd be interested in Soto, all right? I just ripped him for being a star glide. I'd love to have him play left field. So, I would take him at that price. And price is no object.
I think there's a better chance of Bob Melvin losing his job than them trading Soto.
Yeah, well, Melvin is going to lose his job. There's no question about it. All right, so now here's the other point. Ohtani. Come on. He's not going to come to Philadelphia. Why he doesn't want to come to Philadelphia? He's stay on the West Coast. So he'll sign with the Dodgers, most likely. And if I'm the Angels, listen, I don't understand when you reach a point of no return and the guy is probably almost directly telling you he doesn't want to be there anymore because he's tired of losing, why you would not trade him. What's the worst thing that can happen with a trade? If nobody comes to see your team, okay, fine. But you're not going to win anyway, so nobody's going to come and see your team anyway. You're not going to go to the playoffs. So like, isn't this the time to get value? Is it the right thing because you like the guy so much to just let his contract run out so he can sign with somebody else and you get nothing? You have to trade him at this point. You've got to maximize your organization. Mike Trout's getting old now. I mean, he's going to be factored out of this whole thing. So what do you have if you're the Angels? You made a run over the last 3 years with those two stars. It didn't get you anywhere. You got to trade them. And people in Southern California, in Orange County, will forget about it. You know why? Because they wake up and they see sunshine and palm trees and coconuts and lemons and all that kind of thing. At the end of the day, they're not going to fret that they lost to Ohtani. They'll get over it.
It's the Mike Missanelli Podcast on the BetRivers Network.
All right, our guest today on the Mike Missanelli Podcast, a major name joining us today, a man who's made a meteoric rise in national sports broadcasting. You know him as the lead play-by-play man on Fox baseball telecast. He's the number 2 man on the NFL Fox games. And he also throws in the play-by-play for the LA Dodgers on Sportsnet LA. This is a busy man at a very young age. He's the great Joe Davis joining us today. Hello, Joe.
Hi, Mike. How you doing?
Fantastic. Thanks for joining us today. I know you're with the Dodgers in Baltimore right now, so you're kind of I could pretty much yell out my window we could do this interview because you're that close right now.
That's right. Have we checked the schedule a little more closely? I could have just buzzed up there and we could have done it in person.
It would have been awesome. You said done it from my new studio in my home. But I appreciate you joining us. And the first thing I want to talk with you, obviously your career path is so dynamic, and I want to get involved in that with you. But since we're a Philadelphia-oriented podcast, and you were such played a prominent role in what happened last year in this town with these games, and the hype that followed the games in Philadelphia, as a broadcaster, how did it feel to be broadcasting those games in Philadelphia where the crowd was so crazy?
Mike, the division series against the Braves was the best postseason environment I've ever been in at that point. And it got better every step of the way. But the division series was already like, oh my gosh. And we started to think about what this could look like in the championship series and, my Lord, what it would look like in the World Series. And thankfully, we all got to see that. But it was, as we talked about some on the broadcast, as much the crowd and the environment and the city became as much a part of the story to me as it ever does in a team's run.
So the Braves thing is interesting because it's always been that Phillies-Braves dynamic. You go back the series in '93, and, the Braves have always been the nemesis. But it almost looked in that series, and I was there in the stands for a few of those games. It almost seemed like that crowd intimidated the Braves, and it was something I had really never seen. The Braves had played great all year, and they almost like shrunk in that environment. Did you notice the same thing?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, I remember Rhys Hoskins' home run with the bat slam in that division series. And it's almost like when he slammed that bat, he was slamming the Braves to the ground too. Like, this is over. And it was just a relentless attack from the offense, yeah, but with just that wall of noise. I can't imagine what it had to feel like standing down there on the field for the Braves as things were sliding away from them on the scoreboard, also having to feel that crowd.
What I mean, have you been able to notice in broadcasting games the concentration level, whether it wanes for visiting teams or even home teams? Like, it's hard to tune out that kind of thing, but most great players just tune it out. Did
Yeah.
you notice that?
Yeah, I do. I guess they do until they don't, right? Like there are a lot of really good players on that Braves team that the year before won the World Series and then just weren't quite the same guys. And I don't know if that says more about what the environment was in Philadelphia or more about those individual Brave guys. And I don't know what exactly it says about them, but certainly that, I think a big part, and any athlete would tell you that, Mike, as you know as well as anybody, that is something you have to do to perform at a high level is to be able to tune out that crowd, be able to make it white noise. Or there are those certain dudes who like to channel it and really feel it. But I think it's unique to each person.
All right, let's talk about one guy who channeled it, and it turns out to be one of your great calls, probably ever in your career. Bryce Harper steps to the plate in like Roy Hobbs style, and does exactly what was needed, and just like it's a flabbergasting moment, and you reacted to it. Let's hear your call first of all of the Bryce Harper home run to left field.
On the seventh pitch, Harper hits one in the air, left center field, back it goes! Harper, the swing of his life!
Okay, so there it is. Now that obviously can't be planned. So that's an impromptu call. So take me through that moment as that's happening in your mind as you're broadcasting the game.
Baseball is one of those sports, or is the sport, where you look at basketball, you're going to give the ball to LeBron James as the clock's winding down. You look at football, you're going to find your best receiver on fourth down. In baseball, the stars have to align for that situation. It's got to be the guy's spot in the order with the game on the line that happens to come up. And you could kind of see it coming in the late innings. Like, okay, they could get Harper to the play here with a chance to do something. And you get closer and closer, and then it actually happens. And for it not just to get him into that moment, but for him to come through in the moment in front of that crowd that was as big a part of the story as anything, to have it not just win the game, but win the series. And then the backdrop of like the misty rain that gave it this Hollywood movie feel as well. So it had every single thing you could hope for in a postseason moment that, every postseason has these moments, but this is one, I can't think of a moment like that in the last decade that had all those things leading up to it.
So Bryce Harper, the swing of his life just came to your brain.
Yeah, Mike, what I try to do in those big moments, and I'm really fortunate to have done Dodger games for the last 8 years, where it seems like these guys have big moments once a week, whether it's a comeback win or a guy flirting with a no-hitter or whatever. I don't know how you get good at those situations without them happening in front of you. You got to luck out and have them happen in front of you to practice and get better. And like once a week, since I've been the lucky dude sitting in that chair in LA, they've done it and they've given me reps at this. And what I've found is I'm not smart enough to just in that moment have the home run go out and be like, okay, what does this mean beyond home run Phillies lead? So when I see a big moment coming, when a team goes into the bottom of the ninth inning or whatever it is, down a run, and you got the big hitters coming up, I start to anticipate that it can come. And it's not scripting as much as it is trying to wrap my mind around what the context would be. So in this situation, here comes Harper, and I'm thinking like, okay, we've known this guy's been in our consciousness for like 15 years. We've had this narrative on Bryce Harper since he's a teenager on the cover of Sports Illustrated. A baseball lifer that is coming to the plate here in the biggest moment that he's ever had. What would this moment mean? And like, I just kept thinking about baseball life. He's lived the full baseball life. And so I had that context in my mind. And that's an example of what I try to do in those situations. Just have the bigger picture, what the swing would mean, what the story would mean if he did something. And he did. And that's what came out.
It was a great emotional call, yet understated, which is always the best call. That it feels organic and natural. And I'm curious to know how you developed that kind of a style when you started doing this. And I can go back to the beginning where you you were working for free at one point when you came out of school, or when you're still in school. But did you have an idea of what kind of broadcaster you wanted to be?
Yeah, the first thing, Mike, is that I started thinking about wanting to do this when I was probably like 10 years old. As soon as you start having those thoughts, I want to be this or that when I grow up, I knew that this is what I wanted to do. So I was listening to guys and studying them at an earlier age than probably normal people would. I watched the games and I love the games, but I love the guys calling the games too. And Joe Buck was always the guy who was calling the biggest games when I was a kid, from the time I can remember. And so just by osmosis, listening to Joe, I think I took a bunch. I grew up a Cubs fan. Chip Carey was the guy when I first got there, and then Len Casper, and his understated style, probably something that by osmosis I pulled some stuff from. And then you get into doing it yourself. For me, that was in the minor leagues. You mentioned the free job that I did before I graduated from college in Schaumburg. And then I went down to Montgomery with the Biscuits. And you can find tapes. I'm sure if I don't know where you can find them, but if you happen to pull up tapes, one day you can find me screaming my head off. And the next day you can find me acting like Pat Summerall, just straight down the middle, not raising my voice at all. What it was is basically a lab to go and experiment where I belonged and where I was comfortable. Because I think that everybody belongs in a different spot in terms of excitement, where their style falls in, and you don't want to force anything. You want to let yourself be yourself. And I think that I've, through the years, probably found a spot where I'm comfortable with that level.
Okay, so let's go back now. You're from Potterville, Michigan, which I guess is near Lansing.
Yeah.
Okay, and you go to a very tiny liberal arts school, Beloit College, and you go there as an athlete. You're a football player. You're a quarterback, and you get injured, and then you move to wide receiver. But at some point, you say, you know what? My career path as a broadcaster is more important than me as an athlete. That's a hard transition to make when you're playing a college sport. So take me through that part.
Yeah. I guess I was lucky in that my dream as a kid was to go play football at Notre Dame. And when I got into high school and thought, yeah, maybe I could go there and maybe walk on and get a great education, but I'm not getting any help getting into the school from the football staff. Like they don't want me. As that became clear, I thought, you know what, I want to go somewhere where I can, play right away. And I knew at that point what I wanted to do. And the recruiting pitch from the coach at Beloit was, you got a chance to start right away, and you can come be the announcer for the basketball games right away. So he had the magic words to get me there. So I tell you all that to tell you that it was easier than it might have otherwise been for me at that point with a shoulder injury, to say, okay, like maybe football takes a back seat to what I was already doing, and that was broadcasting the games and trying to set myself up for a career in this industry. But yeah, moved to receiver. I think it opened up. If had I gone into that summer before my senior year at Beloit College as the quarterback still, I don't know if I would be leaving school for a few months to go do my first baseball announcing job. I think that I probably would have felt too committed and to the team, to being the leader and the quarterback and the guy that was there. But I'm the receiver, and it's like, well, I'm not a very good one. I can go announce some games for a few months. So that cleared the deck, I guess, for me to go do that. And that led to the Montgomery job, which led to everything else.
Yeah, so you're 3 years of Beloit broadcasting baseball, basketball games, such as school, and then the summer before your final semester, you get hired to be the voice of the Schaumburg Flyers, a independent baseball team in Northern League, unpaid position. Um, I guess at that point you're thinking, I got to start somewhere, and it doesn't matter if they're giving me a cent.
Totally. Yeah. And it was not, I don't even remember thinking, oh man, this isn't paid. All I remember thinking, seeing the job posting and making the application and everything, was, holy cow, this could be perfect for me. It's right between college and home. mentioned I grew up a Cubs fan right there in Chicago. I can sneak away on our off days and go to Cubs games. Like, this is a dream spot for a kid in my position. It never was a thing that I wasn't going to be making any money on it. And I'm not from any kind of rich family, lower middle class. And as you mentioned, Potterville, Michigan. So it's not like, yeah, I'll just ride on my parents' money for a summer. It just, I knew with conviction, this is what I wanted to do. And this would be the perfect spot. And so I applied and went after it very hard and got the job. And here's a funny story, Mike. That summer, they were starting, that ownership group was getting ready to start another team in the league. And so I tried to use the whole summer as a platform to show them that I should be the guy for this new franchise. And it worked. By the end of the summer, they had offered me a position to be the voice of the Lake County Fielders. Kevin Costner was going to be part owner of this team. It was going to be a big deal. It was a little bit north of Chicago, between Chicago and Milwaukee. And I couldn't wait. So I had one more semester of college. I was going to finish up in December, move to Lake County to take this job in January. Somebody talked me into applying for the Montgomery Biscuits job, which was AA, better than independent ball. We know I got that job. Long story short, the following summer, the guy they wind up hiring for Lake County quits in the middle of a game while he's on the air. The franchise folds about a month later. They weren't paying the players. They weren't paying the broadcasters. The park never got built, so they were playing like on, city fields with backstops and sand all around them and everything. Had I not gotten the Montgomery job, that was going to be me calling those Lake County Fielders games and maybe quitting on the air. So who knows where I'd be.
Yeah, all right. So you get to Montgomery, it's the Braves AA affiliate, and then it's just a meteoric rise. I mean, boom, ESPN, and you're calling games on ESPN at a very young age. You called a bowl game at age 25, at the Poinsettia Bowl, I guess, and then Fox Sports comes calling. I mean, this is like a whirlwind advancement from where you were. And in the meantime, I mean, I don't know when you got married and had a family. You have 3 children. You're 35. You're moving from here to there. Like, how did you manage all that?
When you put it like that, I don't know. Gosh, that's a lot of stuff that's happened in the last decade. I think the first thing is to it's never felt like work, because it is what I've always dreamt of, and it never does to this day feel like work. I'm passionate about what I do. And then the other thing, and this, I probably got this backwards, but my wife is the most supportive person I could ever imagine. We met while I was in college, and this was all just a dream still. And so she's been there for every step of the way. She's got the same thankful perspective I do, knowing that this is what I've always dreamt of, and she made it her dream too for me. So to have her support and never at any point to feel like I was held back by anything with any of these crazy moves or going to Montgomery, Alabama, she would be the biggest reason why that's what's gone on.
Or Waco, Texas, and all over the place, and you have to schlep stuff back and forth. And now you found a home. I mean, Southern California, it's all beautiful. You have the 3 kids. You have a house, a burgeoning career. You're on top of your field. But there's a really interesting part about you, that who you are replacing. Now, we know you've replaced Buck for baseball, but replacing Vin Scully is just, I mean, I'm sure you can ask a million people and say, oh, I don't want to do that. They're always going to judge me by Scully. It's going to be hard. What process did you go through for that?
As far as the actual hiring process, it was really weird in that there was no job interview. There was no, semifinalists, finalists, like traditional thing like that. We just got a call one day that they even knew who I was, which I thought was cool. I didn't know how I'd done like 2 big league games at that point. And wound up figuring the whole thing out. The process mentally for me, and as it relates to following Vin, was, okay, yeah, you could look at it and say, I don't want to touch that job, like a dead man walking. Or the way I looked at it was, can I live with myself in 5 years and 10 years and 50 years if I turn this job down because I'm scared it's not going to work, because I'm scared they're going to run me out of town? Or do I go say, screw it, let's give this a shot. This is what makes this cool. And it was for me. I wasn't looking for a job with a team at that point. I was doing ESPN and then Fox stuff at that point, was on a track to do everything I had ever wanted. But this is what made the job one I couldn't say no to. So almost turned it completely on its head and said, my gosh, what an amazing opportunity to be the guy following Vin. And I know everybody else is looking saying, what an idiot to be the guy to follow Vin, right? But I don't know. I looked at it as an awesome opportunity and responsibility and went and tried to be myself. And then the team won like 120 games a year. And so I was delivering good news, and they haven't run me out of town yet.
Yeah. We're talking to Joe Davis, the great play-by-play broadcaster, who's kind of on top of the world, and the lead Fox baseball analyst, and you hear him on NFL games and so many other things. So let's talk about this Dodger experience, because I thought it was really interesting during the All-Star game, and you got Mookie Betts wired, and of course he's a Dodger, and you just deliver it very calmly. Hello, Mookie, and he says, hello, Joe D. So what relationship do you have with players, and where do you take that? Where do you draw a line? What are you careful about what you say, because you see these people every day? Like, how's that work out? Because it's a little different than being the national guy.
Yeah, it is definitely something you have to consider, Mike. And it has been, I guess, as I've gotten quote unquote older, easier, because when I started that job, I was 27, right? 27, 28, and I was the same age as most guys. I'm at least now a little older, 35, so I'd be like on the older end of the roster as opposed to right in the middle. That makes it a little easier to not have to like tell yourself you can't be buddies with these guys. That said, it's not something where I'm like, I got to keep these guys at arm's length, because I'm the journalist and they're the player. No, I mean, look, we're together every day. It's natural that you're going to develop relationships with these people. I am very mindful, though, of the fact that I can't let that dictate how I call the game. And I think whether I'm friends with a guy or I've never met the guy, I'm going to call it like I see it, and then I'm going to move on. And, it's even like the Brett Baty thing the other day where he dropped the pop-up. I called it like I saw it. It was terrible, but I didn't linger. I moved on after that. So I that's just always how I've tried to handle it. And, I'm very proud that in 8 years with the Dodgers, I've never had a situation where a guy's come to me and said, what the hell were you saying? Because I think that they respect that I'm there and I'm around each day. If there is something that I said wrong, I'm right there. I'm not hiding. And I say what happens and I move on.
Well, that in itself is pretty amazing, because I've been around a lot of clubhouses where broadcasters are always afraid of what they say and always get crap from players. So hopefully that continues to go smoothly for you. Let's talk about this call, because you went viral on the call. The Mets have been a disaster, and there's a pop fly, and I don't know if the wind is playing tricks with it or whatever, but Baty gets confused by it. He's circling like an airplane, and he lunges and misses the ball, and the ball hits the ground and whacks him in the face. And let's hear your call first of all.
Pop up, left side of the infield, backs up Baty, having a hard time tracking it. Oh no! What a disaster! That's in to score. Dodgers lead 3-1.
As soon as this ball went up, it was trouble. Baty circling it. Lindor's got to almost go get that ball, call him off. Then it bounces up to add insult to injury. Bounce up, hit him in the face, it looked like. Oh, right in the face.
The 2023 Mets in one clip.
Okay, so there it is. What a disaster! The 2023 Mets in one clip. and it's as accurate as it can be. But were you surprised that it went viral? And how did you handle the feedback from people?
Yeah, honestly, I do feel a little bad about it for Brett Baty, who I'm sure is a nice guy. And but gosh, they just like being around the Mets this weekend. That's as bad of a feel as I've felt this year for sure. The combination of being around and just kind of feeling the energy around the team and then watching them play. And then that play happens and it's like, man, this is the big leagues. That's the other thing, going back to your question, Mike, about how you handle player criticism. And when I was doing college sports, that's different. And I guess you can go down a rabbit hole and say, well, it ain't that different anymore. Those guys are getting paid too. But when those were kids playing on scholarship, sure, but like playing for the love of their school and because they love the game, that's different than these paid professionals. So a play like that, that's a play that should be made, whether it was windy or not. I don't think it was that windy that day, and I guess that's neither here nor there. But yeah, it was. I was surprised it went viral. It's funny. Yesterday, talking to a couple Dodger writers before the game, they said, "Hey, great call on Saturday. That was awesome." And it took me a minute. I was like, "What? Nothing even happened Saturday." Oh my gosh, you mean the drop pop up? Like, gosh, I'm a jerk that people think about that. And so I do feel bad about it, but. It was not a good play.
Don't feel bad. That team spent $350 million not to be that way. So they deserve it pretty much. All right, so you're only a few years from being kind of like a college athlete knucklehead, like we all were at one point, and you're now a huge star. And I'm curious to know, like, how the knuckleheads that you went to school with perceive you at this point. You're only a few years out of college, basically. So, those friendships that you made, all of a sudden you take a rocket ship to the moon, and maybe those guys are still trying to figure out. But, like, how are you perceived by your buddies?
Yeah, that'd be all my Sigma Chi bros back at Beloit College. One of them, Rick Krajewski.
Oh, I was almost a Sigma Chi.
Were you really?
I pledged Sigma Chi. I changed my mind. My brother was at Penn State. This was the Penn State chapter. But I'm familiar with Sigma Chi.
Well, you didn't do it, so I can't do the grip, and I can't.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I bailed.
You know how it goes. It's secret. One of my fraternity brothers and guy lives right down the hall from. His name's Rick Krajewski. He now travels with me everywhere I go as my statistician and research guy and great buddy. So that's really cool to have him around. Yeah, I don't know. I think I would like to think they still think of me as the same guy. I think they would all tell you, Mike, that in college I was a knucklehead athlete, sure, but I was as boring of a knucklehead athlete as you could ever find. I was pretty focused on what I wanted to do when I got out of college, and wasn't that fun. Wasn't a big party or anything like that. So fraternity guy and football player and everything, but focused on what I wanted to do for a living to the point where I wasn't that fun. So I don't think they'd tell you like, oh, what's this, professional guy doing now? He was a shit show back in college. It wasn't like that.
You were always like that. The straight guy who had the career path set out for you. So at this point, I mean, listen, you're at the top of the game right now, and I don't know if you think beyond what you are right now, but where's this path continue to go for you?
Man, I hope I can keep doing the World Series for a really long time. This is the thing that, had you asked me specifically what event do you want to call, if I could pick one game, it'd be Game 7 of the World Series. We almost got there last year, but regardless whether I ever get to a Game 7, if my bosses keep letting me do the World Series, and hopefully Fox continues to have the World Series rights, they do for quite a while, and hopefully they re-up them, and I would love to have a long career doing that. And Kevin Burkhart's going to call the Super Bowl for a really long time at Fox. So I would love to, for a really long time, be number 2 right behind him and continue to get a chance to call football games. And I'm just so lucky. And the Dodger stuff, too. That has exceeded expectations. I can't envision a life without some of that. And I'm doing fewer Dodger games this year, but it feels like the perfect amount with where the stage that I'm in with my young kids and everything. So, gosh, it probably sounds like a cop-out, but really, if I can just keep doing what I'm doing right now, and I would be thrilled. That would continue to be a dream come true.
Well, you could probably do that for the next 100 years, but a guy like you who has these credentials and this look, it's almost like a newsman is going to burst outside of you, like a David Muir type of guy. I mean, can you see yourself as a national newsman?
No, because I don't know anything about anything other than whatever sport and game I'm covering. I'm seriously, I got my family, I got my job calling sports, and I like food. So maybe like Food Network, I'll pivot and do something on there. Is that a thing?
That's cool.
Philly's a great food town.
It is. Yeah. What can you tell me about your experiences with Philadelphia food?
Really like Alpen Rose. Been there, the
Mm-hmm.
Dark Steakhouse, the Scholson
Yeah.
restaurant.
Very, very new and hot in the city.
Mhm. Yeah. What else do I like there? We during the postseason, because I felt like I lived in Philadelphia, we went to Del Frisco's
Mm-hmm.
several times. I think what else?
A lot of athletes will hang in there.
Yeah,
Fly. That's a,
We went there the night of the Harper home run. It was funny. We go back to the hotel, and it looked like, I compare it to the scene from Polar Express. It looked like the scene where all the elves surround Santa Claus in the courtyard outside of the North Pole. It looked like that outside of our hotel there in Philadelphia,
yeah.
and we like carved through that to go to the restaurant and eat. Very memorable night. We were also excited about how the broadcast went and everything. And we spent way too long in there at Del Frisco's and got back way too late. Thankfully, we had a few days off because I needed it after that night.
Well, you were into the party scene like everybody else in town
Yeah.
that day. So let's just quickly end it with your look at the Phillies. They seem to have caught some momentum, and it's kind of the same record last year this time. And they come out of the gate and they take 3 of 4 from the fading San Diego Padres. They look like they're a lock for the wild card. They're not going to catch the Braves, but how viable will they be, you think? Could they be as viable as they were last year?
Yeah, I think that they should be even more so. It's like that doesn't always mean that they're going to make a run. Look at last year. Dodgers won 111 games, and they were out like that in the division series. Phillies barely eked in. I think that I see them doing more than barely eking in this year. But who knows what that means for a postseason run? A lot of it has to do with health, who's playing the best at that time, and a little bit of luck. Postseason is a crocky, you know what, in those short series. You get a little something that goes your way, and magic can happen. Seasons that people talk about forever can happen. So we'll see. But hey, if the Phillies find their way back to the World Series, because we have the American League side this year, so we wouldn't see the Phillies until the World Series. If they make it back to the World Series, I would be plenty pleased to be going back to Philadelphia, be in that environment, be in those restaurants on the nights off.
Well, that World Series, if it's a World Series, would be pumping in this city. Joe, listen, it's been a pleasure. The great Joe Davis joining us on the Mike Missanelli podcast. We appreciate it. Continued success and the best of luck. And your career is just at a fever pitch right now. So congratulations and thanks for doing this. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Mike. Thank you for having me, of course.
It's the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.
Oh, thanks so much to Joe Davis. Good guy to talk to, and a very talented guy, man. You know, it's funny about Joe Davis. No, everybody listens to him goes, good. No, he doesn't annoy anybody. He's straight down the line. He shows the proper excitement. He's at the top. And we've had both guys, Ian Eagle and Joe Davis, in the last couple of shows, 2 guys that are absolutely at the top of their profession right now. So thanks to both those guys, especially Joe Davis, for joining us today as the Dodgers play the Orioles. He was in Baltimore. We're fortunate to catch him down there. All right, so let's close it down for today. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Hope you enjoyed the interview and the commentary today. Of course, the Mike Missanelli podcast is brought to you by BetRivers. Now, we are going video. I know I've been teasing this, but it's going to happen. It's by the time we start the new season, we will be on video. You'll be able to watch us on YouTube. I've got all the equipment here. I've got this big camera in front of me. It's just a matter of it getting hooked up the proper way so you can see our smiling faces every day and catch our guests live on video. BetRivers, thank you so much. Don't forget to download that app if you want to make some bets on the baseball season, or maybe Lionel Messi, who is going to debut on Friday in Miami. I'll have something to say about that on Thursday, by the way. The guy's been down there for like a month. When's he going to play? He's going to grocery stores. We're going all over the place. They had a ceremony to announce his contract on the field with the sellout crowd. He hasn't put the shorts on yet, for crying out loud. But anyway, we'll talk about that on Thursday. Don't forget, you can get me at the email address mike@mikemiss.com. And what I do is a Friday blog on my website, MikeMiss.com. I'm going to do a midweek blog tomorrow. We're going to splash one in. So go to my website, MikeMiss.com. You can find my video blog. And write me at mike@mikemiss.com because I am doing a little contest where I'm going to give away some Mike Missanelli podcast swag, cool hats. And all you got to do is email me something. So, good thought, commentary about sports, about life, a question, whatever it is that gets my attention. Every 2 weeks, we're going to give away a hat. Courtesy of my website. So go to MikeMiss.com and email me first. And then in the video blog, I will announce who is the winner, and I will read your winning email in the form of a sound-off call that I used to do on the radio. Twitter, MikeMiss25. Catch me on Twitter. If you want a personal shout-out, go to cameo.com, type my name in there, and you can hire me to give a personal shout-out, a wedding congratulations, a birthday, pep rally. You got the fantasy football leagues coming out. You want me to introduce your fantasy football league? I can do that for you. Just go to cameo.com. And don't forget, I'm a part owner in the Tally Vineyards in Cape May Courthouse, New Jersey. So if you're in that neighborhood, you stop by the winery, you get a really good glass of wine, and you might run into me there at the Tally Vineyards for wine ordering. You get the wine shipped to you at tallyvineyards.com, Natali, the Vineyards, VINEYARDS.com. In fact, I'm providing wine for a charity golf tournament coming up in a couple of weeks at Commonwealth, which is the benefits retinoplasty, which is a cancer that affects the eyes of children. It's a great charity, and I'm going to be glad to be involved in that. I'm going to be the MC for that event down there. All right, Darren, anything else?
No, season 1 finale Thursday. We're going to take a little bit of a break, and then we're going to come back with our 100th episode.
Sounds good. We haven't been on vacation yet, so we got a little vacation we got to take, all right? But we'll be back with you Thursday. Thanks for listening, everybody. Hope you enjoyed Joe Davis. Spread the word on the Mike Missanelli podcast. Just download it for free. Subscribe for free. It'll come to your inbox, and if you don't know how to do it, just go to Google. All right, Google, Mike Missanelli podcast. It'll pop up. You punch on it. It pops up. It's on Apple iTunes. It's on Spotify. It's on Amazon. It's on Google, wherever. And then just subscribe, and you won't have to worry about how you get it. You'll have access to it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Have a great rest of the day. Have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you on Thursday.
Thanks for listening to the Mike Missanelli podcast on the BetRivers Network.